What's up, everybody out there, and welcome back to Pulse of the Cosmos. I am your astrologer, Emily, and today it's going to be a very different video because I am, yes, going to be talking about the astrology for this week. So we have a lot going on. We have the nodes switching signs today. Mercury's conjunct with the sun today, Monday. Then we have a full moon coming up on Thursday, early Thursday morning. So there's a lot to talk about, but I feel called to share with you guys a lot of the information that I've been finding as I'm researching the ancient history in connection with the astrology and what's going on now, because everything that keeps coming up is aliens and extraterrestrials. And so that's going to be a big part of this video today, is discussing that involvement and where we are in the astrology and connection to some of the power shifts that we're seeing happening in the world right now. But first, for those of you out there, and I know I'm losing some of you guys with this, and people have already been like, not aliens, but come on. As of, I think, 2017, so we're in 2020 and the numbers only grow, there were an estimated anywhere from 2 to 10 trillion galaxies in the universe. 200 billion suns like ours, capable of, having solar systems with planets. There's planets exactly like ours sitting in the Goldilocks zones, exactly like ours are, with the capability to produce life in the way that we are life. So to negate that exists and to have this egotistical supposition that you are the most ultimate intelligent creation of this universe is it's crazy to me. But in any case, and then, we can look at what are human beings, what is life on Earth composed of anyway? What is life on Earth? It's hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen. These are carbon-based life. That's what we are. Carbon is the most dynamic. It can bond with so many different molecules in so many different ways. So we are carbon-based life. What are, in order, the most abundant elements in the universe? Hydrogen, helium, which is a noble gas, it's inert, so that's not part of us, but hydrogen, helium, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, and then other. But at a 1-for-1 sequence, we are composed of the exact same elements that are the most abundant in the universe. And given the numbers of how many different solar systems and how many different conditions exist for life to persist, we're not alone, and we're not the first, and we're not the last. And creation is not a singular event. Creation didn't just happen and then stop. We are constant creation. We are it's a cycle. It's a movement. Creation is everlasting. It's eternal. It's constantly pushing forward. It's life persisting always. It's the expansion of the universe. Creation is an eternal thing. It was not a singular event. And it's so that I want to preface kind of all of this with, as we're going to be talking about extraterrestrials, but in any case, so let's get to the astrology and the history of this, because some of you guys have seen maybe my previous video where I go over some of the history of the astrology behind the Saturn-Pluto conjunctions in Capricorn. And the one that I go back to, the furthest back one that I go to was one in 549 AD, when Emperor Justinian was kind of ruling things over there. So why this one I went back to I found important was because this most recent Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn we had in January, with the South Node there as well, and Jupiter and Sun and Mercury. The furthest one back that I could find, or the closest one I could find with the South Node there as well, which is significant, especially because we're experiencing the same nodal shift today that they went through back in 550 AD, the year after the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that they had back then. So that was the most recent one we had with the South Node there. That is a contract in itself. Anytime you have a cycle like that completing itself, there's a shift, there's a contract, and there's a new cycle starting. And it's so tied to karma, because what are the nodes in astrology? The moon's nodes, they're our karmic destiny and our karmic paths, our life debts over here, what the karma that we need to empty out and the karma we need to grow into and start new cycles with. So anyways, going back to 549 AD, Emperor Justinian was a special character. And there's two different histories on him that they don't really teach you about in school, and they don't really give you credence to the primary source of the time, Procopius, who's the one who wrote these two different histories. So Procopius was the historian of that time. So he's, employed by Emperor Justinian to kind of document everything. And I think he wrote a total of 8 books. He wrote The Wars of Justinian. He wrote buildings detailing the architectural accomplishments of Justinian. He built the Hagia Sophia. So he did have a lot of really amazing architectural accomplishments in his life, and he did fight a lot of wars, and he pushed the Western frontier further and further. He got the Ostrogoths out of Rome and took Italy back. But then it was lost in a siege again in 555. And then he had the Persian-Roman Wars. So he was a really active military guy. But in any case, what I'm getting to is that Procopius wrote another book, Anecdota, which the Latin etymology of anecdota means not to be published, okay? So he wrote this not to be published, and it's called The Secret History. And they'll tell you in classrooms and in textbooks, or, you'll have professors tell you that he wrote this as an insurance policy for himself, because the Secret History details a very different side of Justinian, a very evil side, a very dark side, and a very demonically inhabited side by him and his consort Theodora. And it's so opposite from what all of Procopius's other histories are. And so you'll have scholars tell you that he wrote this as an insurance policy if Justinian ever got conquered or captured and they were coming after him. I would think that it was really the reverse, and that his insurance policy was placating Justinian with all of these books talking about his accomplishments and how great he was. But the truth was in that 154-page book that he wrote about some of the more terrifying sides of Justinian, and that he knew, and I'm about to read to you in a second, he knew that this information needed to be preserved through time, and that some generation at some point would need to unpack this a little bit. So here we are. But in any case, let me share my screen with you guys. Here we go. So this is the book. I ordered a copy, but I'm still waiting on it, so I only have this Google preview. But let's look. This is so funny. Look at the contents, okay? So he starts with Belisarius, who was the general for Justinian. But ignorance of Emperor Justinian and how Emperor Justin and how his nephew Justinian was the virtual ruler. So Justin was not the most competent ruler, and Justinian, his nephew, was kind of in control of things long before Justin passed. But outrages of the blues character and appearance of Justinian, where deceptive affability and the piety of a tyrant, proving that Justinian and Theodora were actually fiends in human form. Justice for sale, how all Roman citizens became slaves. All of these horrible things. I mean, other incidents revealing him as a liar and a hypocrite. I mean, this is just a really damaging alternative to the history that we are presented about Justinian, which we know he wasn't perfect and he was evil, but this presents a whole other side. So I'm going to read to you pieces from this, not the whole thing, because I need. Okay, so what does he say? Yet when I approach this different task, I find it hard indeed to have to stammer and retract what I have written before about the lives of Justinian and Theodora. Worse yet, it occurs to me that what I am now about to tell them will seem neither probable nor plausible to future generations, especially as time flows on and my story becomes ancient history, as it has. I fear they may think me a writer of fiction and even put me among the poets. And he talks up here about how he feared for his life and he couldn't write the truth and he was obligated to write certain things at the time. And he goes through here and he details very different situations. And there's a passage that I pulled up here where he talks about them being not human and demons and vampires. And what do we see a lot of information coming out about today and a lot of speculation about is the blood drinking cults of high societies and kind of this cannibalistic aspect that's also very much so in connection with these Anunnaki aliens, which I'm going to touch on a little heavier after I get through this. And what the poets call vampires, who laid their heads together to see how they could most easily and quickly destroy the race. So they were probably employed by Enlil, who is also the Anunnaki god, or someone under Enlil's branch, some kind of archonic entity. Enlil is the one who set forth the flood. And destroyed the human race. His brother Enki had a son, Atrahasis, the Christian Noah, who he warned, and he instructed to build a coracle and to pack the animals and things on it. There's a whole, you can go, Atrahasis, you can look it up on the internet. This far predates any Christian or Jewish text, and it tells the true story of the flood. But in any case, so quickly destroy the race and deeds of men, and assuming human bodies became man demons, and so convulsed the world. And one could find evidence of this in many things, superhuman power. He goes on to describe down here a lot of the dreadful things, that earthquakes, pestilences, floods, rivers and waters that came in. And he describes incidences down here where their heads would appear to float off or their faces would appear to melt. And Justinian was known to just never sleep. And something that I think happened here, or where am I? Is we did have alien involvement. I'm going to come back to this because this is important as well. But we did have alien involvement. And we know this because we can look back to ancient historical texts all over the world, and they describe these extraterrestrial beings descending to this planet. And they describe their initial work here. You can go back to the Sumerian and Babylonian tablets. You can go back to all of these, the Sumerian Kings List, the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, which details the creation of the universe in allegorical form, which so they had knowledge, they had extensive knowledge. But in any case, so it details their descent here and their maintenance of this world and the dredging of the canals and the slave gods, the Ajiji, getting very sick of this. They were tired of it. They were tired of the work. It was burdensome work. They complained. They wanted relief. So the solution that they found was Enki, the geneticist for the Anunnaki race, their scientists, said that he would create a new race, and he would mix the DNA of one of the Ajiji gods with one of the pre-modern human things in existence on this planet then. So there was a mix between human DNA, or whatever was here at that time, pre-Homo sapien or Homo sapien, I guess, and then the Anunnaki, the Ajiji god DNA, and then that was kind of the origins of where we are now. And then there were also Anunnaki gods detailing in this literature, and you also find this in the Bible when they mention the Nephilim in Genesis. But these Anunnaki gods were also interbreeding with those women. So there is direct Anunnaki bloodlines still on this earth, and there's Ajiji bloodlines, which are of the Anunnaki race on this earth, and that's basically what we are. And there's also, if you look even further into it, this is going to get so weird. I have probably lost already so many of you. But there's also, we can get further into it. Let's look at Jesus. Let's look at the church, because that's a lot of about what we're about to see emptied out with this South Node in Sagittarius, which is our religious institutions. And it is kind of like our higher moral laws and codes and philosophies and things of that nature. So we're about to see a dump there in the same way that with the South Node in Capricorn, we saw a dump of what does Capricorn rule? Governments, larger businesses and corporations, the structures of society. Where did we just that we all know is going through some karmic stuff right now. We're watching it happen in the world around us, and we're all, you know, isolated as a part of that. But in any case, so as we move into South Node Sag, it's going to be more looking at kind of like the morals and the religions and the philosophies and the codes, and okay, let's dump out some karma there. So yes, oh God, I freaking lost my train of thought about. So anyways, I think I was on Jesus. I had to pause and think about that for a second. But okay, so the Apocrypha, the church, this is what I was talking about, the emptying out of the karma of the church and of kind of our religious institutions. So we're looking back to Jesus, and we're going to some texts that the church has suppressed and that the church didn't want to validate as real and as true. Like things like the books of Enoch, you can look back to those. You can look at a newer edition, which is the Gospel of Jesus's wife, which Jesus did not die. We know that in the Apocrypha. And the Apocrypha details his trip to Egypt and how he lived in Cairo and one of the Coptic churches there. There's people that have actually visited this church. It still exists. Jesus went there to learn the ancient Egyptian mysteries, and he taught there. He taught the secrets of resurrection and of life and of some of this ancient wisdom. He was married and he had children, and his bloodline is still on this earth. And there's also there's a theory out there with some evidence, I believe, some credence. Billy Carson has put it out there that Jesus was either Thoth or the son of Thoth, possibly. And we know Thoth shows up in a lot of places throughout literature. He shows up in the Miracles as Quetzalcoatl. He shows up as Hermes Trismegistus, as Metatron, as Thoth, obviously. And so there's a lot of research being done into that area. But in any case, so we are seeing this switch of the nodes. And the reason that I want to bring up Justinian is because I think in that cycle, in this cycle that we've been in from the last Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn with the South Node, there was a shift in the balance of power. And there was a shift to the darkness. I think the darkness kind of usurped that period as they usurped the age of Pisces, right? The dualistic Pisces, the slippery fish, it can kind of go either way. And the dark kind of energies, the archonic energies, the fallen angel energies, the other side, they kind of slipped in and they usurped it with, I believe, I think a very crucial incidence that kind of solidified that was the reign of Justinian, and was that Saturn-Pluto conjunction with the South Node then, because Uranus for that conjunction was in Libra, and it was at 25 degrees Libra, I believe. So it was kind of squaring over to all of this. But what do we know Uranus does? Uranus brings, again, and Uranus is also rules Aquarius, which is alien, right? Which rules aliens and extraterrestrials. But Uranus was in Libra, and Uranus brings kind of like sudden shifts, right? Change in direction. It upsets things. It disrupts kind of where it is, and it shifts things very suddenly and surprisingly. We see that happen in Taurus right now. The last time Uranus was in Taurus, it was the stock market. It's happened again now. It's sudden shifts in different directions. But back to Uranus and Libra, I think there's a shift in the balance. I would think there was a shift in the balance of power. What does Libra rule? It's the scales. It's our justance. It's the balance of what we keep. It's the link between the internal and external worlds. You know, that's why it's the seventh sign. But I think with that Uranian shift and the crazy direction back then was in the balance of power, and that it was in the usurpation of the age of Pisces into a dark age when it should have been, it could have been in an opportunity of enlightenment in a light direction. We could have ended up in a Tesla world and not a Rothschild and Rockefeller Gates world. But in any case, so I think as we've come around and that contract has completed, And now Uranus is in Taurus, where there's like shifts in the stability and shifts in the earth and shifts in Taurus, that fixed earth quality. We're seeing a kind of a shift in that power, and we're seeing a sudden shift in the energy. And once again, it's ripe for the taking, for the light, and for the people that see the divine aspects of us being human, and see the fact that we are gods ourselves, and see the fact that you are source, that you are divine, that you are an extension of God to experience this material universe, that your consciousness is eternal, that this is just one of many realities and many existences that you live in, and there's many dimensions, and that death is just an illusion, right? This is just an avatar. This is just an avatar. What you channel into, what you tap into, is that heart space and that consciousness and that eternal voice. And there's ability to command that into existence over this, and start working with the laws of the universe to manifest the kind of life that you want, and to follow kind of your soul's path here on your journey to enlightenment, on your journey to understanding. And I think the ultimate lesson in all of this is an understanding of compassion for yourself and compassion for others. And but in any case, I won't get too mushy gushy into all of that, because we can get into some of the more mundane aspects, not mundane, but like mundane, but aspects of what the nodes are going to look like, because we've seen the buildup coming. We do have Sag, which rules, long distance travels and experiencing other cultures and international things. And we've seen the shut off of that. We've seen the restrictions with the South Node there already. And we can expect for about the next 18 months, while the nodes are in these signs, that international things and long distance travel is going to be restricted, and that it's not going to shift back to normal immediately. And then we have the North Node in Gemini, right? So we will see an uptick in technological innovations and remote work. Gemini rules short distance travel. So we'll see, a lot less long distance travel. It's going to be much more about your immediate environment with Gemini. It's going to be much more about kind of establishing your space there. And also going on mental explorations. Gemini is a very mercurial sign. It's ruled by Mercury. It likes to look at all of the data. It's very curious. It wants to figure things out. It wants to pick things apart. It likes to look at all of the data. So I do see kind of like an uptick in the tech industry coming, and a lot of like more little devices. Gemini does rule motor skills as well. So we will see a lot more remote jobs. Like obviously we're seeing kind of the direction that's headed in already, and we're going to see an uptick in IT. And then with yourself, exploring the curiosity with yourself on a more esoteric level, it's going to be kind of like, okay, exploring and pushing your mental boundaries, and a shift in perspective. Gemini shifts perspective all the time so that it can see all the sides, right? It's a dualistic sign. So it's constantly shifting perspective. That's why they're known to kind of have two sides. So I think there's going to be a massive shift in world perspective. I think this is part of the paradigm shift. I think that the shift is not an externalized thing. Like you are the shift. Your consciousness undergoing the awakening process that it's going through right now, that is the shift. You are part of the shift. You are part of the movement. We are conscious. The earth is conscious. Planets are conscious. And it's all part of the creation, and all part of the shift, and all part of the progression. And planets are conscious. And if you think about the macrocosm and the microcosm of the world, and you look at the human body has more bacterial cells in it than human cells. Not by mass. By mass, human cells have more mass, but by number, the number of bacterial cells you have in your body far outnumbers the human cells. So you are like a little city. You are like a little city with all these little cells living their daily lives, doing their things, all in that you have no clue, that you're not necessarily like conscious and participating in that. You're not talking to your bacterial cells every day, and you're not, you know, you're not having communications with these things. They exist there while you exist, and you live your life in the same way that the earth and the solar system and the sun and the universe do. Like, and I'm not saying that we're bacteria to this earth, but I'm making the analogy that it's just another version of the microcosm and the macrocosm that we live in, which is crazy. So again, I think this is a shift in perspective. Gemini is very curious. It wants new ideas. It wants new connections. It wants to be mentally stimulated. It wants a new environment. It wants to kind of get out there and push the exploration. So I think it's going to be an interesting time. I think we're watching a moment of a major kind of shift, and what the dark has been holding on to is kind of like their stable hold over this earth. But we do have to remember that, especially with the way that the media is interacting with this, and with Pluto's effects and all of this, and I'm going to come back and do another video on the full moon happening this week as well, but that there is a lot of deception, and that there is a lot that we're not seeing that's going on. And with Pluto, it's a slow reveal. It's a slow reveal. So we're watching kind of a slow reveal of where we've been lied to, and where we've been under an illusion, or where we've been deceived, or where we've been deceiving ourselves. And what indoctrinated beliefs and opinions about this world did you just accept without questioning, that now you're like, maybe I should question that a little bit. I think there's a lot of that going on in the world right now. So in any case, I am going to let you guys go. I've got to take my dog to the vet. But I love you all so much. I'm going to sit down later today and film a video on the full moon, so we can all look into that. And then I will get to the sun sign horoscopes and risings as well. So I love you guys so much. I hope you're doing well out there, and I will be back later.